special board meeting Monday, May 20th, 2019. This is our 5-year forecast presentation. Sarah, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Matthews. Present. Mr. Sanders.
Here.
Mrs. Zoff.
Here.
Mr. Sedevy.
Here.
Mr. Simpkins.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent's recommendation.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I have a motion to approve an agreement with Walter Haverfield, attorneys at law, to add them to our approved lawyer list.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Mr. Sedevy.
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins. Mrs. Zoff.
Yes. We have a treasurer's recommendation.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to recommend the motion to approve the agreement for technology services between the Madison Local School District and Newbury Local School District, effective July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, and the amount of $45,000.
Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And I just wanted to note that the contract still includes that we have the 30-day window that we can give if we needed to change that. And there's a reduction in price from 15 significant from last year. So, thank you.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Mr. Sedevy.
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins. Mrs. Zoff.
Yes.
And if the board wouldn't mind having a seat in the front row, we'll give them presentation. So this is the May 5-year forecast, which is just basically an update of the October 5-year forecast. Some of the things and the objectives that I wanted to go over tonight were there were changes in the ending fund balance due to the reductions in staff. There's an open enrollment out update. The forecast includes unemployment equal to 33% of the staff affected by the reductions. The May forecast still assumes the levies will not be renewed. And there's a legislative update for House Bill 166, and there's an update for the negotiated agreements. So this is the October forecast that was presented at the time. If you'll notice, we were estimating to end 2019 with a $4.8 million balance and fiscal year 20 with a $3.6 million balance. This forecast did include the reduction of 6.5 staff members. 2 of those staff members were staff members that had passed away and their positions were not refilled. So there's been a lot of moving parts staff-wise since October. Since the October forecast, we've had 2 certified resignations. We have one classified position that resigned and was not replaced. 1 administrative resignation. There has also been 1 certified retirement. There were an additional 10 reductions in force that took place in addition to the 6.5 that took place in the October forecast. So altogether, the total impact realized by these reductions will affect the bottom line by approximately $900,000. So this school year, the employees saw a 1% increase to the base of their salary. This was the last year of the collective bargaining agreement for them. We were able to successfully negotiate a new agreement for 1 year. And so next year, for the 1920 school year, the employees will see a 2% increase in their base. Because of declining enrollment, Newbury did reduce its staff, and we will see about $640,000 savings for the cuts for next year, and also an additional $40,000 in savings for the positions that are going unfilled. Also in this negotiated agreement was a clause for the employees to be able to have a one-time payment. The board authorized us to make them have a one-time payment of the total of $167,000. This is to enable them to have health insurance coverage should the territory transfer go into effect. It will have, this will enable them to have payment for their coverage over the summer months once the school, if and when the school does have the territory transfer. So health insurance rates have been growing at a very high rate over the past few years. In 2018, we saw a 20% increase. In 2019, we saw a 15% increase so far. And so we're hoping moving forward, it's going to go back down to national trends of about 8 to 10%. Also into this category, there's an estimated $190,000 in medical savings being realized from the reductions in force. There's also built-in 33% for unemployment compensation for those employees affected by the reductions in force. So there's been a lot going on with school funding on the state level. There was a new governor elected this year. Representatives Cupp and Patterson took on the task of creating a new funding formula to try and fill in the gap and even the playing field for school funding. They came up with a plan called the Fair Schools Funding Plan. However, there's been a lot of deliberation and we're not really sure where that's going. So right now, you can see in yellow, the governor's proposing an estimated $25,000. However, the House is proposing an estimated $28,000 to $41,000. So we're really not sure where these deliberations are going, but we'll keep our eye on them and keep everyone updated. So currently, we have open enrollment out figures from West Geauga. We're set to lose 50 students to open enrollment to West Geauga next year, with an additional 13 going to Berkshire. However, Berkshire's open enrollment period does not close until September 1st, so it's not unlikely to assume that we'll lose an additional 5 students to Berkshire in that time frame. That being said, we're projecting the student enrollment count to be about 275 for next year. We have reached out to additional school districts and we're awaiting the response for their open enrollment figures as well. Additionally, we have 13 students enrolled in kindergarten for the 1920 school year. Oh, and this depiction is of the census data. In blue is the live births, and the red is the actual kindergarten enrollment. So you can see while there were 42 live births in 2019, we only had 25 enrolled. In 2020 for next year, 47 with only 13 enrolled. So I just thought that was a good depiction of the enrollment trends. So our revenue comparison for 2018 to 2023, real estate is obviously our biggest source of revenue at Newbury. It comprises over 60% of our revenue. It was rising at a steady pace of about 4.25%. However, we are expecting that to drop about 6% with the non-renewal of the 2 levies. So the real estate comprises of the inside millage and the 3 emergency levies. Another area that's going to be changing is the state funding, as we discussed with House Bill 166. Again, we're not really sure where that's going to go, but we're projecting an increase in that from approximately 12% to 16%. This chart shows a depiction of the amount of real estate that we receive. So if you look back from 2016 to 2019, you'll see that we were trending at about $6.5 to $6.6 million. That is going to decline in 2020 with the loss of the second collection of the 2 emergency levies. So that'll drop us down to about $5 million in 2020. Moving from 2021 to 2023, that's going to drop down to about $4 million. So Newbury receives a little over $1 million per year in unrestricted aid from the state. Under the current funding formula, the district is guarantee funded. We're on a 0.5 state share index. If enrollment trends stay the way they are, we're set to lose 3% more in fiscal year 2020 and again in fiscal year 2022, and those are all factored into the forecast. So restricted aid from the state is primarily from reimbursements for catastrophic costs for students with disabilities. Last year we received around $93,000. We're projecting to receive about $90,000 per year going forward, so that's going to remain pretty steady over the course of the forecast. All other operating revenue, the largest source of all other operating revenue for Newbury is for students open enrolling into the district. So we receive funding dollars for students who open enroll in. In fiscal year 2018, we received about $200,000 for students open enrolling in. In 2019, it dropped to $175,000 because we lost 7 students. They enrolled elsewhere. If this number continues to decrease, this will affect our bottom line and further impact the revenue that we will receive. The other main source of revenue is Medicaid reimbursements from the federal government and payments in lieu of tax abatements. These are expected to stay the same over the course of the forecasting period. So all other financing sources can be comprised of various things. Returns of advances from the operating fund, miscellaneous payments, student fines, those sort of things. A large source of this is workers' compensation premiums from the state. We typically receive about $14,000 per year, and we're expecting that to remain the same over future years. So for the expenditures category, you'll notice in blue the salaries is decreasing from 18 to 23. That's mainly comprised of the reductions in force that we had built in. The purchase services for 2018 were above what I had initially projected. There were just many different anomalies that we weren't expecting to happen this year that did. We had several well issues, we had several electrical issues, so that drove up the cost of the purchase services beyond what we were anticipating. In 2023, even though purchase services is going up, the overall expenditures are going to drop about 2% due to budget reductions. And this is just further expanding on the purchase services category. About 60% of the spending that we use for purchase services is used to educate resident students who are attending the school outside facilities for special education and special needs. We are anticipating special education costs to grow by 4% over the next 5 years. Also, maintenance costs have grown by over 50% over the past 2 years, but those are expected to level off moving forward. And those are because of some of the reasons that I said in the previous slides, just things we weren't anticipating that happened that we don't think will happen moving forward. Capital outlay, as we stated in October, items already built into the capital outlay category were the paving project. We had $238,000 slated for the paving project, and also another round of Chromebook replacements. Obviously, if we don't do as much paving as planned, or if we choose not to do the Chromebook replacements, that will drive up our bottom line and we'll have a greater fund balance at the end. So this is the simplified version of the May 5-year forecast summary. I tried to make it big so everybody could see. So we will be ending this year at a $4.8 million balance. Fiscal year 20 will be at $3.7 million. I know I stated last meeting that I thought it would be more around $4 million, but once the unemployment costs were added in, that really drove the number down. Fiscal year 2021, about a $2 million balance, and then 22 and 23 deficit spending. So thank you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Or comments to the forecast?
So, I see we go into deficit spending in 2022. And that's without either of the renewals.
Correct.
What, if we put on one renewal,
It would keep us in the black.
For how long?
Throughout the course of this forecast.
Throughout 2023. That was just one renewal. Do we know which one that is?
Either.
Either one.
and then with the destabilization of the school, I understand why we have students open enrolling. How much is that costing us total again?
We lose a student at $6,020.
All right. And then what does the state give us as far as per student? Do we have that number?
It's around like $2,300.
So the rest of it-
It's not an even figure. It's like 2,354. I calculated it today, but
So basically that $3,000, we'll say, is coming from the local taxpayers.
Would you want to take any questions from? Anybody have any questions for Ms. Paul?
So you're saying one renewal would keep it in the black all the way through the 5-year forecast?
that's correct. I have confirmed that with the auditor's office.
Okay.
And that is projected at the expenses that we have included in our forecast. So speaking past the territory transfer, you have to consider capital outlay, what that costs to put money into the facility. And the board has not discussed the long-term plan for that. We did, but we did not discuss it as with final numbers. Anybody else?
Thank you. That was
Thank you for your presentation. It's very informative. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to recommend the motion to approve the 5-year forecast.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby,
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins, Mrs. Zoc.
Yes. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sedeby,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoc.
Yes. Thank you.
I said, all you can do is delete it out. Then say you have an enrollment problem. And then blame the enrollment problem. Yeah, when you're done.
I have to grab my laptop upstairs.
I look like most of the